Why we marry who we marry. A spiritual perspective. Maybe you've asked yourself, in the quiet after a fight, or in the silence of a love that no longer feels alive, why did I end up with this person? Not just once, but again and again. Maybe you thought it was love. Maybe it started with connection, comfort, or chemistry. But somewhere along the way, it turned into confusion, pain, a deep question you couldn't answer. Buddhist wisdom offers a powerful possibility. What if who we marry isn't just about love, but about karma? Not karma as punishment, not as fate, but as a mirror reflecting back to us the patterns we haven't healed, the lessons we've avoided, the parts of ourselves we've tried to ignore. Marriage, in this light, becomes something sacred, not because it lasts forever, but because it shows us who we are. It brings into our lives the one person most capable, not of completing us, but of revealing us. In this video, we'll explore why we choose the partners we do, not just with our hearts, but with our hidden history. We'll walk through Buddhist insights, psychological truths, and stories that shine a light on what we call love, but what might actually be an invitation to wake up. Because in the end, marriage isn't a reward. It's a path. And every step, every joy, every wound, every goodbye can be the doorway to freedom if we're willing to look within. Let's begin. The karma behind every I do. Why love isn't random. We like to think love is a choice, that we fall in love because someone aligns with our values, inspires us, or simply makes us feel less alone. But from a spiritual perspective, especially within Buddhist wisdom, marriage isn't built on preferences, it's built on patterns. And karma is the hidden thread stitching those patterns together. What if your marriage didn't begin the day you met? What if it began lifetimes ago, with a promise unkept, a bond broken, or a wound left open? In Buddhism, karma is not fate. It's not punishment. It's simply the echo of intention. It brings us the people who reflect what we haven't yet healed. That's why certain relationships feel magnetic, even when they hurt. The pull you can't explain? That's not always love. Sometimes it's recognition, not of the soul's beauty, but of its unfinished business. You feel drawn to someone not because they complete you, but because they mirror what you still carry inside. A man once asked a monk, "Why would karma tie me to someone who feels like a prison?" The monk replied, "Because karma doesn't bind you to comfort. It binds you to clarity. That person may be your spiritual mirror, not your soulmate. They may push every button, not to break you, but to awaken you." Marriage, in this light, becomes a karmic classroom, and your partner becomes the curriculum. They won't always teach with kindness, but they will teach with precision. Because the soul doesn't seek ease, it seeks evolution. If your marriage feels difficult, ask not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is this trying to show me?" Because love isn't random. It's exact. It shows up when the soul is ready, not to be fulfilled, but to be revealed. Not for comfort, but for awakening. The real purpose of marriage. We often seek relationships that feel good, safe, and affirming. Something or someone to ease our loneliness, to heal what we don't want to face alone. And at first, marriage might seem like the fulfillment of that search. Someone who gets us, holds us, stays with us. But as time passes, the fantasy gives way to friction. And in that friction lies the deeper truth. Marriage was never meant to comfort us. It was meant to wake us up. Buddhist wisdom tells us that what disturbs us is often what teaches us. We're not bound to others by chance, but by karma, by the echo of unresolved patterns. And so the person we marry may not be the one who soothes our wounds, but the one who exposes them. Their presence becomes a spotlight, not a shelter. Their silence, a trigger. Their tone, a mirror. And when we want to run from them, what we're really running from is the unhealed parts of ourselves. A woman once said to her teacher, "I thought I was marrying someone who would love me unconditionally, but now I feel like I'm always being challenged, judged, even misunderstood." The teacher replied gently, "That is not failure. That is the work beginning. Marriage doesn't complete you. It confronts you. It introduces you to your edges, your fears, your emotional habits. It teaches you where you still expect others to fill what only inner growth can fulfill. When you feel let down, it isn't proof that love has died. It may be the moment love is asking you to grow. Because real love doesn't keep you comfortable. It invites you into consciousness. In this way, your partner becomes a path, not a rescuer, but a revealer, not a constant source of ease, but a daily call to awareness. The purpose of marriage is not to avoid discomfort, but to let discomfort guide you inward to what needs healing, what needs releasing, and what needs to be understood for the first time. So when the relationship stops feeling easy, don't assume it's broken. It might finally be doing what it came to do, wake you up. When the heart recognizes an old pattern. Sometimes you meet someone and it doesn't make sense. They're not who you imagined falling for. They might even hurt you more than they hold you. And yet, the pull is magnetic. You can't explain it. You can't walk away. Friends warn you. Logic screams at you. But something deeper, quieter, insists on staying. This isn't always love. Often, it's recognition, not of who they are, but of something unfinished inside you. In Buddhist thought, the heart remembers more than the mind does. It carries imprints, karma, not just from this life, but from many. When we're drawn to someone in ways that defy reason, it's often because the soul recognizes an old story still needing closure. What feels like destiny may actually be a mirror reflecting a past wound. You might be falling not into romance, but into repetition. A woman once shared, "He made me cry more than smile. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't leave." What she described was not weakness. It was a karmic pull, an emotional echo calling her to finish what had once been left incomplete. And sometimes, karma returns not to make you suffer, but to help you awaken. It reappears in a new face to show you an old pattern. These patterns aren't punishments. They're invitations. They ask, will you respond the same way this time? Will you chase what hurts just because it feels familiar? Well, you confuse attachment with love again. Until we become conscious, we often fall not for people, but for patterns. We're drawn to what we recognize, even if what we recognize is pain. It's not foolishness. It's the soul seeking resolution. And that's where freedom begins, in seeing the difference between what feels familiar and what actually nourishes us. True awakening is when the heart pauses and asks, do I know you because I love you, or because I've met this pain before? Same pain, new face. How karma repeats until you wake up. It's one of the most heartbreaking questions people ask themselves. Why does this keep happening to me? You change partners, change places, change everything. Yet somehow, the story remains the same. Different face, same wound. You tell yourself this one will be different. But before long, the familiar pain returns. The silence, the distance, the betrayal. The pattern, from a Buddhist perspective, this is not bad luck. It's not the world conspiring against you. It's karma repeating itself, not to punish you, but to show you what's still unconscious. Karma doesn't just live in the past. It lives in the present moment as your reactions, your attractions, your emotional blind spots. When left unexamined, these patterns recycle themselves, drawing you to people who activate the same emotional scripts until you finally see them for what they are, lessons disguised as love. A woman once cried in front of a Zen nun, "Why do I always attract men who ignore me?" The nun gently asked, before they did. Did you already feel unseen? That's the truth many avoid. The pain we meet in others often echoes the pain we already carry. Karma doesn't begin with them. It continues with us. The soul has a quiet intelligence. It doesn't seek what's easy. It seeks what will wake it up. So if abandonment is your deepest wound, you may unconsciously choose people who cannot stay, not to suffer again, but to finally recognize your worth doesn't depend on being chosen. If betrayal haunts you, you might keep meeting it until you stop betraying yourself. Karma isn't only about others. It's about how long we replay the same story before writing a new one. There's nothing wrong with longing for love, but love without awareness often becomes repetition. Until we become conscious, we don't fall in love. We fall into patterns. And what hurts most is not that others disappoint us, but that deep down, we saw the signs and stayed anyway. Healing begins the moment we stop blaming the mirror and start looking at the image within it. Karma repeats not to break you, but to awaken you. When you finally stop asking, "Why is this happening again?" and start asking, "What is this here to teach me?" the cycle begins to break. Right love, wrong time, when the soul isn't ready. Sometimes, two people meet and the connection is undeniable. It's not just physical. It's not just emotional. It's something deeper, like a recognition, like home. And yet, despite that rare and beautiful spark, the relationship struggles. Small things become arguments. Presence turns into distance. Intimacy fades into frustration. They both love each other, but somehow, it's still not working. In Buddhism, timing is part of karma. Not just who you meet, but when you meet them. A soul that is still evolving cannot fully meet another, even if the love is real. The seed may be perfect, but the soil isn't ready. And so, even the most profound love can become a battlefield if both hearts aren't prepared for what that love requires. One partner might still be ruled by fear, clinging to control. The other might be running from wounds they haven't faced. What they mistake for incompatibility may actually be misalignment in evolution. They haven't grown into the people who can truly hold each other. Not yet. And love, no matter how pure, can't substitute for presence, maturity, or inner stillness. A man once asked a Zen teacher, "If we love each other, why is there so much pain?" The teacher answered, "Because love arrived before readiness. You are still shedding who you were, and she is still becoming who she will be. You met in the middle of becoming." It's one of the most difficult lessons in love. Sometimes the problem isn't the person, it's the timing. And timing in the karmic sense isn't about the clock. It's about consciousness. A heart that is still guarded will mistake love for threat. A mind that is still unsettled will turn closeness into chaos. And a soul that hasn't learned stillness will reject the very thing it longs for. This is why some love stories don't last. Not because the love wasn't real, but because the foundation wasn't there yet. From a spiritual lens, this doesn't make the relationship meaningless. It makes it sacred, because the pain becomes the teacher, the goodbye becomes the growth, and the love, even if it ends, becomes the reason you finally return to yourself. The spiritual mirror, how your partner reflects your unseen self. It's easy to think of our partner as separate from us, someone with their own issues, reactions, and flaws. But in spiritual practice, especially in Buddhist psychology, we're taught something radically different. The people closest to us are not just companions. They are mirrors, and the more emotionally intimate the relationship, the clearer the reflection. What you notice in your partner often reveals what remains hidden in yourself. Their criticism might echo your own self-judgment. Their emotional distance may reflect the disconnection you feel from your own needs. Their need for control could be shining a light on your fear of surrender. And this is why intimate relationships are often so uncomfortable. because they don't just show us who the other person is, they show us what we still need to see within. A woman once shared with her teacher, "He always makes me feel like I'm not enough." The teacher asked, before he said a word, "Did you already believe that?" She paused, then nodded. That is the work. That is the mirror. Relationships don't create our wounds. They reveal where they live. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that what we perceive outside is shaped by what we carry inside. If our mind is restless, even love will feel unstable. If our heart is full of self-doubt, even care will feel like criticism. The partner becomes a projection screen for our most unconscious beliefs. And the more unaware we are of our inner life, the more we blame them for what they're reflecting. But here lies the gift. When seen through the eyes of awareness, the relationship becomes a path. Instead of fighting the reflection, we begin to study it. Instead of trying to fix the mirror, we begin to heal the image. And when we do that, something extraordinary happens. Not only do we change, but the reflection begins to soften. Your partner may stay the same, or they may shift in response. But the real change is that your suffering no longer owns you. The spiritual mirror of a relationship is not here to flatter us. It is here to free us. And the more courage we have to look into it with honesty and compassion, the more peace we find, not in the other person, but within ourselves. The wisdom of letting go. When the lesson is complete. There comes a moment in certain relationships when something shifts. The lesson that once felt loud and urgent begins to quiet. The emotional turbulence softens. The push and pull that once defined the connection fades. Not always with anger, sometimes just with stillness. And deep inside, you feel it. The karma has run its course. What needed to be seen has been seen. What needed to be learned has been learned. And now it's time to let go. But letting go isn't easy, not because the love is still alive, but because the attachment is. The identity you've built around this person, the hope, the history, the endurance, it all becomes tangled with who you think you are. Buddhism teaches us that clinging is suffering, and that freedom begins the moment we stop confusing loyalty with attachment. Staying after the lesson is complete doesn't lead to growth. It leads to stagnation. A woman once said to her teacher, "I stayed even when I was dying inside. I thought that was love." The teacher gently replied, "No, that was attachment pretending to be devotion." Sometimes, the most compassionate thing we can do for both ourselves and the other is to walk away, not in anger, but in peace. Because when you leave with awareness, you don't just break a relationship, you break a karmic cycle. Letting go is not about erasing what happened. It's about honoring what it gave you and knowing when its time is done. It's looking at someone and no longer needing them to be anything other than what they were, a sacred teacher in disguise. Painful, yes. Imperfect, absolutely. But meaningful, transformational. In Buddhist practice, the lotus does not grow in clean water. It rises from the mud. And some relationships are that mud, messy, uncomfortable, even suffocating at times. But from that soil, clarity blooms. And with clarity comes liberation. So when the path with someone ends, don't ask, "Why couldn't we make it work?" Ask instead, "What did I wake up to because of them?" That answer is your freedom. You married their wounds too. The hidden baggage in every union. When you say, "I do," you don't just marry someone's smile, their charm, or their dreams. You marry their fears, their stories, their unfinished healing. You marry the parts they've hidden from the world, and sometimes even from themselves. And whether you know it or not, they marry yours too. Every person carries emotional baggage, not because they're broken, but because they're human. And when two people come together, those bags don't disappear. They simply get unpacked, slowly, sometimes suddenly, often unexpectedly. What seemed like a simple disagreement becomes a battlefield of past pain. What appeared to be oversensitivity is actually a survival mechanism from long ago. Your partner's silence might not be about you. It might be the echo of a childhood where their voice was never heard. In Buddhism, we understand that suffering continues when it remains unconscious, and most of our patterns in love are driven not by intention, but by unresolved wounds. Until they are met with compassion, those wounds will guide our reactions, shape our expectations, and trigger misunderstandings. Not because we don't love each other, but because we haven't yet loved the parts of ourselves that are still hurting. A man once said, "She keeps pulling away, even though I'm trying so hard to be present." His teacher replied, "Maybe you're present with her, but are you present with her pain?" Love requires more than presence. It requires perception. It asks us to see what lies beneath the surface, not to fix it, not to carry it, but to understand it, so it doesn't quietly run the relationship from the shadows. The most painful truth is also the most liberating. You didn't just marry a person. You married their pain. You married their story. And they married yours. The healing begins not when you make each other perfect, but when you stop expecting perfection and start showing up with patience, with compassion, and with the awareness that what rises in your relationship is not always personal. It's often historical. From the Buddhist view, relationships are not meant to complete us. They are meant to reveal what still seeks completion within. And when we begin to meet our partner's wounds with curiosity instead of judgment, we create space for both souls to breathe. That space, that gentle, conscious space, is where love finally becomes real. Gratitude as karma, love that was never about romance. Not all marriages are born from passion. Not every "I do" begins with butterflies or fireworks. Some unions are quiet. Some feel confusing. Some leave you wondering, why did I choose this person when my heart wasn't fully in it? And yet, something kept you there. Something deeper than logic. Something softer than desire. That something, in Buddhist wisdom, might be gratitude. In karma, gratitude is more than a feeling. It's a force. When someone touches your life in a profound way, offers you safety, kindness, protection, your soul remembers. Even if your mind forgets, even if lifetimes have passed, the energy of that gesture remains. And sometimes, what looks like a marriage in this life is simply the heart honoring a debt of love from another. A teacher once said, "If someone gives you light when your world is dark, your soul may return one day to keep their fire burning." That's how karmic gratitude works. You may not feel romantic longing. You may not share the same dreams. But there's a pull, a quiet vow. And that vow isn't about possession. It's about completion. People often stay in relationships they can't explain. They say, "I'm not in love, but I can't leave." They're not weak. They're not trapped. They might simply be finishing a story, a karmic thread woven long ago. And when we stop judging relationships solely by romance, we begin to see a different kind of beauty, the beauty of repayment, of honoring, of spiritual integrity. But this doesn't mean we must stay forever. Karma doesn't demand sacrifice. It asks for awareness. When the gratitude has been expressed, when the care has been returned, when the energy feels complete, then letting go becomes an act of love, not abandonment. The bond served its purpose, and now it can rest. In the West, we often think of love as passion, but in Buddhist thought, love takes many forms. Some come to awaken, some come to break, and some come simply to thank. That too is sacred. Dharma marriage, when two souls walk the path together. Not every relationship is built on desire or healing. Some are built on purpose, quiet, steady, and often unnoticed by the world. These unions are not loud, but they are luminous. They don't erupt in chaos or passion, but they unfold with clarity, intention, and grace. This is the nature of a Dharma marriage, a partnership not just of hearts, but of paths. In Buddhist understanding, Dharma is the truth, the teaching, the way. A Dharma marriage is one in which two souls come together not just to love each other, but to serve something larger than themselves. They meet not to fill a void, but to fulfill a mission. And because of this, their love looks different. It's less about what they give to each other, and more about what they give through each other. These relationships may not have dramatic highs and lows. They may not look romantic in the traditional sense, but they radiate a quiet power. There is mutual respect, emotional maturity, and a shared devotion, not to ego or attachment, but to growth, awareness, and contribution. Where most couples ask, "What can I get from this love?" Dharma partners ask, "What can we offer through this love?" A teacher once told his students, "When two conscious beings walk the path together, even silence becomes sacred." That's the essence of Dharma marriage. It's not about needing each other. It's about meeting each other again and again, in presence, in truth, in service. These relationships are rare, not because they are impossible, but because they require inner work. You can't enter a Dharma marriage unconsciously. You must first know who you are, what matters, and what you're here to do. Only then can you meet another who's walking in the same direction. And when that meeting happens, there's no clinging, no chasing, no fear of loss. Just two souls, walking side by side, not to escape suffering, but to transform it. Not to avoid life, but to live it with awakened hearts. That is the quiet brilliance of Dharma love. It doesn't seek to be everything. It simply becomes what's true. The final mirror. Marriage was never the goal, awakening is. We spend so much of life searching for the right one, the perfect partner, the lasting relationship, the happily ever after. But what if that search was never about the other person? What if it was always leading us back to ourselves? Marriage, in its deepest form, is not a destination. It's a mirror, a sacred space where your shadows become visible, your wounds become loud, and your illusions begin to unravel. It's not here to complete you. It's here to confront you with yourself. And in that confrontation, the possibility of awakening begins. Buddhist wisdom teaches that all relationships are impermanent. They are not ours to keep. They are moments of shared karma, born to teach, to trigger, to illuminate. Some partners stay for a lifetime. Others stay for a single lesson. But each one holds up a mirror to what you carry inside. Your fears, your longings, your stories, your past. You might think, they're hurting you, ignoring you, failing you. But look closer. Are they reflecting back the parts of yourself you've yet to embrace? The insecurity you hide, the anger you repress, the love you withhold from yourself? When you stop seeing marriage as a goal and start seeing it as a spiritual mirror, everything shifts. The pain becomes information. The conflict becomes invitation. The end of a relationship doesn't feel like failure. It feels like release. And the ones who challenge you the most often become the ones you are most grateful for, because they showed you the truth of who you are. You don't need a perfect marriage to awaken. You just need to stay present with what the marriage is revealing. Because awakening is not something you wait for, it's something you choose. And the more honestly you face what the relationship mirrors, the more freedom you begin to feel, not from the other person, but from the patterns that once controlled you. That's the final mirror. Not the reflection of your partner, but the reflection of your own consciousness. And once you see it clearly, the goal isn't to hold on. The goal is to become. Conclusion: the soul's freedom beyond the form of marriage. Marriage, at its deepest, was never about forever. It was about awakening. Through love and conflict, joy and grief, beginnings and endings, it was always pointing us home, to the self, to the truth, to freedom that doesn't depend on anyone else. Throughout this journey, we've seen that not all marriages begin with love, and not all loves end in marriage. Some unions arise from past debts, others from unfinished stories. Some are here to awaken, and some to conclude a karmic cycle. But all of them, in one way or another, reveal what lies within us: our patterns, our wounds, our fears, and our forgotten truths. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, what matters most is not the form, but the awareness we bring to it. Marriage is a form. Sacred, yes, but temporary. It is a space where the soul comes to remember, to heal, and ultimately, to release. When this is done with presence, even the ending becomes a blessing. Even the pain becomes clarity. And even separation becomes a kind of freedom. So if your marriage has been painful, know this: pain does not mean failure. If it has ended, know this: endings are not the opposite of love. They are part of its rhythm. And if you are still searching, know this: no partner will ever give you what you haven't yet given to yourself. The real relationship, the one that liberates, is always with your own mind, your own heart, your own awakening. Everyone else is a companion, a teacher, a mirror along the way. Let marriage be what it is, a path. And let yourself be what you are, free. If this reflection has touched something in you, we invite you to keep walking with us. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like more gentle wisdom like this. Share this with someone whose heart may need it. And if one of our other videos is calling you right now, trust that. Because in the end, the awakening never ends. It just keeps unfolding.